Hello, welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For many years, I made up a new bedtime story for my children every night. And in 2020, I told them a long story called Myra and the Online School for Adventuring. In tonight's episode, Myra and her friends take advantage of their newfound freedom to explore the forest. Will they find what they're looking for? Or will it find them? You'll just have to listen and find out. Enjoy the story. Myra led the way into the forest. They had decided that one of them needed to stay, just in case, in order to let any sort of rescue party know where to look for them, if they weren't back by morning. They had headed into the forest to look for the deer, hoping to find Veer and Doa, and explained to them how little they had been able to learn about what was going on with the string demon and the school, and that they hadn't really been able to recruit any assistants yet. Myra wasn't really sure what she expected the deer to do for them with this information, but she just felt like they were at a dead end. They had done their very best. They had gotten into the library and hadn't found anything of use as far as they could tell. So she led them through the paths until they reached the spot where they knew that you turned off the path in order to head into the clearing, where they had seen the deer holding deer church in the past. And they were about halfway to the clearing when Chelsea held up one hand and, in sneaker finger speech, signed out that there was something following them. Myra stopped and listened to the night sounds of the forest. She glanced over at Hetty and Willow, who were not really sure what was going on because they couldn't read sneaker speech, but were also seeming to strain to listen. Myra glanced over at Tweety, and then Sneaker spoke to Tweety to move ahead a little bit, figuring that if it was a giant spider, they had already found out that Tweety was apparently inedible and not that interesting for giant spiders. So Tweety moved forward as cautiously and as silently as Myra had ever seen the Rockkin move. And it was that caution that allowed Tweety to suddenly just fall flat to the ground as a white string shot over where Tweety's head had just been.
Demon time.
Tweety said, "It's the string demon." "All right," said Myra. "Everybody back to the trail." And they began to back along. Myra and Chelsea both had their student-issue daggers out, but Tweety had sprouted razor-sharp crystals out of Tweety's wrists. Tweety neatly sliced the next two strings that came flying out of the dark of the forest out of midair. Myra heard Hetty chanting something behind her and was mildly annoyed that Hetty couldn't be quiet like a proper sneaker, but immediately repented her irritation when a moment later a brilliant light shot up from Hetty's hands and hovered right at the tops of the trees, casting light about as bright as a full moon on the forest around them. And in that light, Myra could spot it, leaping between the treetops. It was just as she remembered. Too many legs, too many teeth, too many eyes. It made no sense. Just the sight of it made her mind a little dizzy, trying to piece together those parts that did not belong together. They continued to back along the trail. Hetty's light helped a great deal, because now that they could see where the strings might be coming from, they were ready for them. They backed until they were on the trail, and then Myra sucked in a breath as the string demon suddenly lowered itself on a string looking like the world's most awful spider until it reached the ground. Willow bent down and touched the ground, and vines suddenly sprang up all around the string demon, wrapping many of its legs in place. They continued to back away, but the string demon took only moments to free itself, and then it was after them. Now they were not so much backing away as running backwards, glancing back to make sure that they weren't running over anything. They still had a long way to go until the edge of the forest. The string demon had skittered onto the trail behind them and was following them along it. It was definitely gaining on them. Myra said, "We've got to do something to slow it down." Tweety straightened Tweety's arm, and one of those crystal daggers came flying out, and Myra was sure that it was going to hit the string demon square in the middle of all of its many legs, eyes, teeth, but it was about 2/3 there, and blink of an eye, strings came shooting out, wrapping around it, and then bearing it down to the ground so that it bounced harmlessly at the demon's feet. But it took a few seconds and stopped its onward rush. They continued backwards. Myra estimated they were about halfway back to the edge of the forest. Wait, she thought, what if it follows us onto campus? Are the stalker llamas going to be able to do something about that thing? I don't think so. And she continued back down the trail. The string demon was gaining again. The strings were coming faster now. One of them wrapped around Myra's dagger, jerking it from her hand. It's going to catch us, she thought. It is going to catch us all. I've got to stop it somehow. She thought to her fighter days of watching her parents practice, one of them rushing in to slow an enemy while the others escaped during a tactical retreat. That's what I've got to do, she thought. I've got to stop it. And she stopped and yelled, "Keep going!" And as she said it and was getting ready to start running towards it, suddenly a deer came flying from the side of the path, antlers glowing, and rammed into the side of the string demon, knocking it off the path. It was back on its feet immediately, only to be rammed from the other side by another deer. "Go," said Myra. "They're buying us time." And they turned, no longer running backwards, and ran for the edge of the forest. Myra could hear it behind them. She was the closest. At the back of the pack, she glanced back. It was so close, but the edge of the forest was just ahead, and she ran out onto the open fields of campus and looked back. The string demon had stopped, as if it had run into a pane of glass, right where the path ended after the last tree in the forest. She stared at it for a moment, and it stared back, many-eyed. "Why do you stop there?" she thought. She looked back at the others, and they slowly backed away. As they did, the demon turned and slipped into the shadows of the forest. "What was that?" said Hetty. "That," said Myra, "was the string demon." "Is it always waiting for you like that?" said Hetty. "No," said Myra. "No, we've only ever seen it once before, and it didn't even chase us until we messed with it." "Not tonight," said Chelsea. "Yeah," Tweety said. "Tonight it was definitely waiting for us."
Suspicious after they were told by the administrator of the school to go into the forest. That's sus.
And that is where we will end the story for tonight. Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's show, but questions and running commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was created by Brandon Thompson, and our wonderful logo was designed by Silas Swindelin. If you know someone who might enjoy the show, please tell them about it. Do you want more stories? You can now subscribe to the show and help pick a new story for me to tell every month. The show's website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.